Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. Let's talk about math in Final Fantasy X. Okay, so with Final Fantasy X, it is a huge game to say the least. Final Fantasy is a giant franchise with a lot of games in it, and Final Fantasy X is really high up there. Same with like Final Fantasy 7, 6, and 9, and stuff like that, like in terms of like fan favorites. And with Final Fantasy X, we're going to talk about how math is used in that, like with the focus being on the combat. I am going to talk about the story a bit, but that's a little later on. I'm going to avoid like major spoilers if I can help it, but I'm not going to hold back. So, spoilers ahead. And throughout the course of it, I'm going to have fun with it. And yeah, so let's get into it and assume that there are spoilers ahead. Okay, so with Final Fantasy X, it is an RPG. And there's so much to that. And there's a lot of math and like the stats and the progression, and also just the combat as a whole. So let's start from the very basics, build our way up. There's no way in the world I'm gonna be able to cover everything, but that's also not the point. But because it's like I want to get it out there that it's like, hey, there's a lot of math in all of this, and it just keeps on getting deeper. like, so yeah, so at the base level, right? You have your characters, and in Final Fantasy X, you can control up to three people at a time. And with your characters, the idea is like they're dishing out damage while trying to avoid taking it, or reducing it if they're taking it, or being able to negate it or recover from it. So you have this just there's math on this base level, right? You're trying to keep your characters at 100%, or at the very least, prevent them from going to 0% for their health. And for your opponents, you're trying to take them to 0%. So that's like the basics, right? And there's math on that, just like again at that base level. But then things expand. There's so much in the game that affects the damage that you do and dish out. So let's get into that. One of the big things to start is stats, right? Like, and there's a lot of stats to consider with Final Fantasy X. You have like your sphere grid level, and we'll get into the sphere grid later. Um, you have your HP, your MP, you have your strength, your defense, your attack and magical attack, magical defense, evasion, accuracy, luck, things along those lines, and all those impact how your characters interact with the world, and a lot of it ends up being about how much damage you're dishing out or not taking, or how you can impact those things, right? Because you have things like strength attack and stuff like that, right? And it's like, well, you have your characters, they have like their attack, and that impacts their strength and like how much damage you're dishing out to the opponent. And it's based on many factors, including their level, and all that good stuff. And then like things like defense, it allows you to see how much damage you're reducing. So it's just like the stats are just inherently mathematical, and that's fascinating. And then you have things like I mentioned things like evasion, accuracy, and stuff like that. And I meant to also mention like agility and magic amongst all those other things that I mentioned. Agility ends up being huge because in Final Fantasy X, you have the conditional turn-based system instead of the active one. And the big thing here is that your stats impact how many turns you're getting in a given battle, at a time. And things like agility, it among other things, it affects your speed and how many turns you're getting, right? So that ends up being very pivotal in how you approach battle, right? And then you have things like luck and evasion, which among other things impact like your ability to actually get hit in the first place. Um, so you have like all these sort of things to consider, and then you have the idea of magic, and there's different magic throughout the game. You have black magic and white magic, all that good stuff. Um, and so you have the more destructive magic and the more restorative magic, for instance, right? And so you have like these stats impacting all of those things, and so that basic idea of dishing out damage and trying to not take it, it starts to expand. There starts to be multiple factors that impact how that all goes, right? And then you have the idea that you're going out there and you're fighting your opponents, right? And as you're fighting your opponents, you're going on your quests and your side quests and all that. You're gaining ability points and you're using those ability points on your sphere grid, which is named that for the general shape, but also like the spheres, spheres that you're using to progress, like or nodes, whatever you want to call them. Um, and those the idea there is right, like you're gaining ability points and you're using them to like boost your stats throughout the game but also gain new abilities. So things end up getting more complicated as you progress, but things start to open up as you expand that sphere grid, and characters that might have been like more suited you know towards one thing can be a little bit more well versed, right? Like you might have a character that didn't naturally know black magic or didn't naturally know white magic, but they can learn it, right? And so you have to decide how you're going to want that sphere grid to like expand, right? Um, and there's math not only in everything that I just said, but in you determining what's going to work with your play style. And so throughout it, not only are you gaining like different abilities, some of which will dish out more damage, some of them will allow you to do like I was talking about earlier with like black magic or white magic. So you might be dishing out even more damage, or you're able to recover more, or you're able to dish out some status ailments or recover from said status ailments. And with status ailments, like there's various ones that impact how you're dishing out damage or how you're taking it, right? You might have things like poison which slow you down, or something like sleep or paralysis which hinder how you're going to operate in battle. But the idea is, it ends up being math at the end of the day. And so that's something to consider, right? And so you have this like base idea that you're dishing out damage while trying to not take it. And then you have your stats, and then you have your sphere grid. And like as you're expanding that grid, you're able to do even more, which allows you to expand things even further. And so you have that kind of loop going. And so there's math in all of that, and all of that is math. And it's put to you in a way that like is visually stunning and interesting, and it's also fun. And let's see, like there's also the idea of overdrive. And overdrive, the overdrive abilities are the Final Fantasy X version of limit breaks. And while in the past, well, I mean, there's various ways to get limit breaks, but a lot of them are centered around taking damage, right? Like you take enough damage, you get to a that threshold, and all of a sudden you're able to like dish out more damage, or you're able to like heal people more. There's a variety of effects. Here, it's a little bit different, right? Like, so with the overdrives, yes, their effects can vary, like dishing out more damage or recovering more, or just any number of effects, right? But it's also like how you fill them up. It's not just damage based. It depends on like different overdrives that you're choosing, right? Like, because each character has their own personal overdrive, but like you can choose like how they're gonna fill up that overdrive, right? Like and so there's different positions that you can choose for that overdrive gauge. So you have some that are in fact based on how much damage you're taking, but there's also some that allow you to dish out more damage. Sorry, they allow you to dish out damage and fill that overdrive gauge. There's some that like you're filling that overdrive gauge through status ailments, like delivering those. Sometimes it's taking them. Um, so the whole idea though is like it's not exclusively, you know, linked to taking damage. It depends on the character. It depends on the sort of position that you're taking for that over drive gauge, and like you can learn those things and master them as you go, right? There is probably a better way to say all of that, but my point is, the overdrive abilities are the Final Fantasy X version of limit breaks, and there is some versatility in them, and some a number of ways to go about getting them. And so you have all these things adding up to the gameplay, right? Like, and is your fighting, is your expanding your abilities on a like sphere grid, you're growing as your character is growing, you're navigating the story, and there's just so much to do, and like the combat, the gameplay is so crucial to navigating the story, because like how are you going to get to the story if you're not able to get past your opponents, right? And so it's just like you get to decide how you want to play, and I think that's cool. And there's math not only in the combat, but like the resource management, which does affect the combat, right? Because you get different items throughout the game, and you have money throughout the game. You're buying different items and equipment and weapons and all that sort of stuff, and you're managing your resources and you're navigating things through. But there's not only math in that, but math in how the world is designed, right? Math and how it's designed, the scale and scope, the character designs, the colors, the lighting, the sound, whether it be the sound effects, the music, or the voice acting. And while we're here, Final Fantasy X had the first voice acting for Final Fantasy, and there's like math in everything that I'm saying here. Because like for light and color, just on a base level, light is something that is inherently mathematical and its properties, and color is a side effect of that. And with sound, it's the same thing, and just how it's implemented. Like, and if we focus on music, the music is great. There's math in what it is, sure, but like how it's composed, how it loops. Math in each and every note, each and every instrument, and when it comes into a song, math and how it makes you feel, right? Like, because music for like a somber moment or a joyous moment or a more intense, battle heavy moment, all of those things are going to be different. And there's math in how all those are composed. And that's pretty cool. And for voice acting, there's math in that too. And we don't always think about that, but it's true, right? Because not only are, you got these characters and they're controlling their volume, but there's math in what they're saying, how fast they're saying it, their breath control, and a lot of different sound properties that come with voice, but also what's happening on that more meta sense with their bodies is they're using their voice, right? There's a lot of math in it. It's just it's awesome how that goes, and how everything is like mixed so on the sound level, right? And one more part of the gameplay though that I meant to mention is Blitzball. I'm not gonna get too heavy in that because that could be its own video, but Blitzball is a sport and that you can actually play in Final Fantasy X. It's part of the larger narrative with it, but it's like you can actually play it as a mini game, and it's actually really involved. They do not hide the math at all. Like, there's a lot of stats, a lot of rules, and there's just like math and how that all like plays out. And there's like math on a even more like meta level though. Like, there's money that's required to make a game like this, right? There's a budget, there's marketing, there's promotion, there's coding, and everyone's like doing their part, right? Because you have someone who's leading that voice team, someone who's directing, who's writing, and you have a team of a lot of people working together to bring you a dope game. And so yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And then if we switch gears, I want to talk about how I feel about the characters and the story, and then we'll wrap it up. So for Final Fantasy X overall, it's an excellent game. It's one of those games where it actually does live up to the hype, right? I can't stress that enough. It's like it's excellent. Um, and as far as like the characters, like it's a mixed bag. Um, there's some characters I really like and some characters I really don't. Um, I mean, mine's like I guess like I would say like Yuna is probably my favorite character. Like for Final Fantasy X, although like Lulu is like really high up there, if not just for her design, which I enjoy. And Riku is pretty solid. Waka, eh. They make that character so racist, and it does not get addressed as much as it should. um, and of course, there's other characters like Tidus and Auron, Jact, and a lot of other ones. And like for Tidus, oh god. Okay, so Tidus is a default main character. But you know, I always hate that for Final Fantasy because it's like, well, we're really dealing with an ensemble cast, so it sucks that we kind of have like a default main character. But you could argue that it's Tidus for sure because a lot of it's from his perspective, but also Yuna. Um, but with Tidus, it's like he's deeply annoying. Like it's on purpose, but it doesn't make it less obnoxious. But he does get better over the course of the game, right? Um, and so I like that, and I think like him and Yuna, like their dynamic, I think is good because like they kind of rub off on each other, and there's a certain understanding, you know. And so I like Yuna's progression throughout the game. Like everyone does progress on some level, but like Tidus and Yuna, you know, probably realistically have the most. You know, it's up for debate, right? Um, but while we're talking about sorry, ooh, I was about to say Tifa, wrong game. But while we're talking about Tidus and like Yuna, let's talk about the laugh. All right. Okay, so like it's been memed to death at this point. But you know, over the years you might have seen like I mean, some of you realistically have played Final Fantasy X if you're watching this probably, right? Some of you may not, but like you've probably seen like the laughter scene and it's like you know, that whole thing. So some people, you know, like will make fun of the scene and call it poor directing and poor voice acting, and it's like, is it though? Because if you know you're viewing things in context, the laughter is bad and it's intentional within that context. Like it is forced laughter within the realm of the story, within the realm of the universe. And more importantly, it's you know the bad laughter that is intentionally bad is used to cheer you know Yuna up a bit, and you know her and Tidus are just laughing horribly and trying to find some measure of peace as they navigate everything. And so it's just like it's crazy that you know people meme the crap out of it. And it's like, well, actually, it works in context. It absolutely works. It's not bad voice acting. It's not bad directing. It's not even bad writing. It freaking works, okay? I apparently needed to get that off my chest. Okay, so let's talk about the story for a little bit. It is one that I enjoy. It's one that does hit you. It's fun, and I like just how things do progress for the most part. You know, and I like that, like, you know, Yuna is a summoner, like, in the story, and, you know, there's special stuff with that. But, you know, in the gameplay, on the gameplay level, she's also that, among other things. So it's like, it's pretty cool to see that. Um, but yeah, overall, I like Final Fantasy X. Um, and my focus for this video was to just talk about you know that first Final Fantasy X. I do want to talk about 10 too, in another video. And for the record, I like that one too. I like those games for like you know different and similar reasons, and I'll get to that in that video. But yeah, Final Fantasy X. It is a classic at this point. God, it came out in 2001. It's 2025 now, so it's 24 years old at this point. It's been around for a minute. It was received very well when it came out. Um, it's been received pretty well over the years too, and um, it holds up. Like, and I dig that. So yeah, that's what I have to say for this video. I'll see you in the next one.